So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the first session in the afternoon. Everyone's still a bit agitated, but we can take a few minutes. In the meantime, let me tell you that someone lost this notebook. So please, oh, amazing. Now everybody's paying attention. So I have nothing else to offer but this notebook. Anyway, so it's yours. Can you prove it? It's a green one, A5. Oh, yes. Correct. Thank you. Thank you so much. So welcome to this first session in the afternoon, which is dedicated to the topic changing humanity's relationship with the ocean, youth and art as agents of change. So my name is Sergio Brighton. I'm the executive director of the EurOCEAN Foundation, which is fortunate to have the same name as the event where we are today. So you already know the rules of the game. So there is an open chair dynamic. So by all means, those of you that throughout the discussions and the presentations are motivated to ask some questions, please join us. You can sit around on the front line, and then I will prompt you to join the stage when appropriate. So just to provide you a bit of background, this is a very interesting topic. It's a kind of emerging topic in parts of it, some parts not so emerging. There were so far over 110 projects to address the ocean decade related challenge with the same name. So changing humanity's relationship with the ocean. And there were so far over 170 actions in the different EU missions restore our ocean and waters related to topics such as literacy, outreach, engagement, and mobilization. So there is a lot of work already being done in this broad topic, but not necessarily covering all the areas that this topic entails. And I would highlight the three keywords. One of them is change, the other is youth, and the other one is art. So these are the three keywords that I would select. And although the first two are more or less debated and we are working on that, and there are a lot of initiatives going on that domain, I think the art part is the most innovative when it comes to this panel. So through art, we are trying to change the way that people behave in relation to the ocean. And by doing so, we expect to protect the ocean in a sustainable way. And art involves interacting with our emotions. So it's through our emotions that we will carry out this change, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting and very innovative approach. And related to this, it's worthwhile saying that there is a growing topic on psychology, which is on the field of emotion science. And this is a research field in the area of psychology that is growing very rapidly over the last 30, 40 years. And what they study is very much related with how emotions affect decision-making and how decision-making affects our emotions. So it has everything to do with this. So I see a very interesting avenue for research, for future research initiatives, not only bringing together ocean scientists, not only bringing together artists, but also bringing together psychologists that are trying to understand how this relationship between emotions and decision-making works. So I see a very interesting research avenue opening up. So if there are any policy officers listening to this, I think this is the way to go, having these three fields working together in a very multidisciplinary approach and contributing to make the effect that we are trying to produce in society at large. Of course, associated to this is also the very interesting question, which is how do we assess the impact of the change that we are trying to provoke. Is it effective? Is it not effective? Do we need to change something? So there is also kind of semi-quantitative, qualitative aspect of this. So without further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, which is, sorry, let me look in my sheets. So Ursula Kluvik. So Ursula is a senior lecturer at the English department of the University of Bern, Switzerland. She's a PhD in English literature from the University of Vienna, Austria. And she specialized in environmental and blue humanities and has, of course, written books on the field. So welcome, Ursula. Please go ahead with your presentation. You have the floor.
Thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me and all the speakers on this panel to enable this interdisciplinary conversation. I'm delighted to be here and to be able to give you some insight into how the humanities are engaging with the sea and in what is a rapidly rising new field of research called critical ocean studies, or the blue humanities. So I'm a literature scholar, and I want to start with a question. I'm sure you're all familiar with Dracula, the novel Bram Stoker wrote at the very end of the 19th century. I want you to consider what you think of when you think of Dracula. I would assume that, well, first of all, most people are, of course, going to think of vampires, perhaps of the mountains of Transylvania, crumbling Gothic castles, perhaps of London, the city that Dracula is trying to colonize, brave men and maidens in distress. If you think of a fluid, it's probably going to be blood, right? I assume that not so many of you would think of water. But Dracula is very much a water novel, and this book cover expresses that a bit by placing the castle by the sea. Count Dracula uses water in many different ways in this novel. He uses it as a means of transport. He travels to Britain by the sea, he leaves Britain by boat. There are rules that determine how he can engage with water. He creates a sea fog so that his boat remains hidden on the sea. He himself hides in the fog in order to be able to kill off one sailor after the other. He creates a sea storm so that the by now rudderless boat can be swept into the Bay of Whitby. He bites his first English victim on the coast, and she describes this experience like a drowning. He can also, and so can his companions, transform into different shapes of water. The female vampires, for instance, transform into and out of snowflakes. And Dracula himself seeps into houses as fog, vaporous water, in order to overcome barriers such as locks. And I'll just show you an example of how another character describes Dracula coming in as fog. I saw the mist stealing in and I grabbed it tight. He had to come out of the mist to struggle with me. I held tight till I saw his eyes. They burned into me and my strength became like water. So here, Dracula is entering a house as fog. He partly comes out of the fog, but also the character who's trying to stop him expresses his experience through water. As his strength leaves him, he becomes like water that evaporates in the sun. So water and the sea play a very significant role in Dracula, and this is by no means the only novel that is such a water text. In fact, literature is full of water and the sea. And because I'm an English literary scholar, I'll just mention a few Anglophone texts here. But water and the sea really play a huge role in world literature. For instance, I'll just mention Shakespeare. You can see here how Shakespeare's plays are full of shipwrecks, sea battles, maritime trade, ships, pirates, drowning, for instance. We could say that the English novel was born at sea with Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, a novel about a shipwreck and a character who has to stay on a remote island for 28 years. Gulliver's Travels, written soon after, a novel about how the protagonist travels from fantastic place to fantastic place by sea. I'm sure you all know this one, Moby Dick, a true sea novel, if ever there was one, about the obsession of a character with the sea and a sea creature. But also going further back and addressing world literature, the Odyssey, Epic of Gilgamesh, where the main character dives into the deepest part of the ocean in order to find the tree of life. The ancient Sumerians obviously knew that world oceans mean life. So literature is absolutely steeped in water and the sea. What is surprising is that it has taken literary scholars so long to see this. This is where the blue humanities comes in, as what historian John Gillis has called a belated recognition of the close relationship between modern Western culture and the sea. The blue humanities reacts to the insistent presence of water and the ocean in our cultural imaginary, and to its neglect. In the words of Steve Mentz, who coined the phrase the blue humanities, in the modern West, the ocean is everywhere and nowhere, at once the most meaningful and most overlooked feature of our cultural imagination. And the blue humanities explores what this means. Blue humanities scholars do so by studying the history of the sea, in literature, how the ways in which we know the sea, through what stories, shape our engagements with the world, how taking water rather than land as a paradigm changes our view of the world, how different media engage with the ocean, how transition zones are represented, how thinking about islands or land as islands in the world ocean changes our perspective, how many spaces are in between spaces, and what forms of writing are inspired by engagements with the sea. But why should marine scientists, policymakers, etc., be concerned with what blue humanities scholars like I do? Well, the most important reason is that, as Richard Carritt said about the environmental crisis back in the 90s, the real material ecological crisis is also a cultural crisis, a crisis of representation. We cannot neatly separate the ecological problems from the way in which people relate to the environment and to how they imagine the environment. How people think about the ocean is key, how they think about their engagement with the ocean, their dependence on the ocean, their impact on the ocean. And literature grants us access to the stories that emerge from this relationship. And there are several things that literature does particularly well. It can bring, for instance, broad general problems down to the personal. It can translate larger problems into individual challenges and explore how single human characters or groups of characters engage with such problems, how they feel, what they think, emotions, what motivates their actions. So it makes the abstract concrete. It can model different scenarios and outcomes. For instance, many writers currently write about the environmental crisis and climate change. They write climate dystopias or utopias, narratives that imagine life with a changed climate. And these narratives play through various possibilities and their threats, their outcomes and options, characters' fears. They invite readers to imagine what the world towards which we are heading with a changed climate might be like. And through this, they invite readers to engage with and face the environmental crisis and the various alternatives. Literary scholars can identify narrative structures and compare them by thinking historically. For instance, if all we hear from policymakers and scientists are essentially stories that are pared down narratives of progress, the same age-old narratives of progress that have got us into the present situation, can we expect these to help? Or might we need a more fundamental restructuring of our ways of thinking and telling stories? Might we need new narratives? How do we get these? I've been asked to engage with the question of what literature can do to change people's relationships with the ocean and to motivate new behaviors. One point that I would like to make here is that we cannot tell writers what to write. Literature is an aesthetic medium, and this means that it cannot be turned into a straightforward tool of science communication. It works differently. It can, of course, but then you don't necessarily get very good literature. Didactic texts tend to be unsatisfactory, at least on the aesthetic level. One reason for this is that literature should provoke many different interpretations in different readers rather than transporting one message. So perhaps the more interesting question is what literature already does and what we can learn from it. And here I want to suggest two things. Literature holds immense knowledge about how inextricably linked humans, water, the oceans, the environment are. And I want to give you an example here. This comes from Graham Swift's novel Waterland, a novel about the Fens, a coastal marshland in southeast England, which was drained in the 17th century. We heard about saltwater marshes yesterday. And the novel discusses the fate of two different families as linked with the environment in which they have lived for centuries. And I'll just show you one quotation here about how they think about themselves. They did not forget in their muddy labors, their swampy origins, that however much you resist them, the waters will return. So this shows the extent to which characters are shaped by water. Life in the Fens is shaped by water. The people's labors are muddy, their origins are swampy. They know that water will return. And we heard yesterday that this is in fact now one of the plans, that the sea will be allowed to reclaim part of the land. This also influences the character of people. They are described as having phlegm, the old watery phlegm, which cooled and made sluggish their spirits. So the watery environment directly influences or seeps down into their characters and dispositions. Another example from a Kenyan novel by Yvonne Adhiambo Owuor, The Dragonfly Sea, a very recent novel. Here, a young girl who's from a remote island and loves the sea, in its most at peace when she's swimming, describes her experience of diving as becoming a part of the sea. The sea had many eyes, and now hers were another pair. So we've heard a lot about data, and this allows me to transition into the second point I wanted to mention, actually. World literature as an archive of culturally diverse forms of engagement with water and the sea. We've heard a lot about data, and valuable as these are, data are just one way of knowing the sea. And I'll show you one last example. In this, the protagonist of the same novel, Owuor's novel, The Dragonfly Sea, lets the sea in. It becomes a part of her body, of how she is in body and mind. It was like this whenever she let her body sink in seawater, in pursuit of a summons to experience what inhabited the depths, seeking to press into herself, feel it on her skin, etching the unreachable into her dreams. This is very far removed, of course, of knowing the sea as data. This is a completely different experience that literature gives us here. The motto of the conference is to speak with one voice. I think that literature can help us hear and include other voices, voices that are not often allowed to speak on the world stage. And as such, it has a function that invites us to go beyond what we think we know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ursula, for this fantastic presentation. I guess we cannot unsee this anymore now that we have seen this. We could say literature influencing our relationship with the ocean since what, the 1500s, something like that. So thank you very much for this and for presenting us in more and less evident the relationship between literature and the ocean. I particularly appreciated the book on Dracula. I never realized that. But okay, the other ones are more close to the topic. Thank you for introducing to us the topic of blue humanities. I think there is a lot to discuss about that, very recent one. And also the caveats of how we can use literature, and which is very interesting as well, because it's not definitely a tool for science communication. So we need to be aware of that. And I would say these are the main points that I would highlight from your fantastic presentation. And then I would move on to the next guest, to the next speaker. So Daniel Ray, which will be talking to us about increasing marine scientific culture in society. Daniel is a professor in stratigraphy at the University of Vigo. He's the head of the Campus do Mar and the director of the Marine Research Center at the University of Vigo, and implemented responsible research and innovation strategy and strong interest in science and outreach. Sorry. So Daniel, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Safia. So good afternoon to everyone. I have to say that I am a bit nervous because this is the kind of talk that I never done before. And it has an emotional part of me into it. And I want to show how has been my trip between, or my travel through science and art. So the beauty, okay. So the beauty of the oceans has been captured by artists in many ways, by paintings, sculptures, or even small decorative objects like these glass creatures from the ocean in glass. See, these pieces can inspire people to appreciate and protect the oceans. New technologies appearing at the end of the 19th century allowed photographers and filmmakers to also capture beautiful images and videos of underwater ecosystems. Yeah, these visuals also can raise awareness about the ocean's diversity and vulnerability. But artists and marine scientists have also collaborated to create intricate illustrations of ocean exploration and sea creatures, merging scientific accuracy with artistic expression. Many scientists at the time have to become artists to illustrate their work out of sheer necessity. At some point, technological advances made these skills unnecessary, but produce beautiful images that can be appreciated purely on their own beauty. Oops. And even can be the subject of commercial use. Yeah. Artists has also collaborated with marine scientists to visually represent complex data in a more accessible manner. This is one of my favorite examples. I am a geologist, yeah, and this painting of the mid-oceanic ridge by Henry Beman in 1977 was based on the scientific profiles of Mary Tharp and Bruce Heesen, and it was of great relevance to understand and publicize plate tectonics, and it is a painting. These representations have in turn greatly influenced visualization of scientific data, like this computer-generated bathymetric map of the Galician continental margin that accurately reflects depth with color and physiography through shading in a way very similar to the painting that we've seen before. Conversely, artists can also interpret quantified data from nature to express natural forces and oceanic changes as a sensory experience, making knowledge at the time more inclusive. For example, this is a Californian artist, Adrian Siegels. This work represents the changing patterns of daily daily tide through months and changing and showing the sea level change in this beautiful coffee table. Infographics are a particularly interesting form of partnership between scientists and artists, which are driven by the pressing necessity of explaining complex concepts through informative and accurate, but visually appealing simplicity. Like this informative and high quality infographic of the cycle of plastic and microplastics in the ocean. Or like in this beautiful example of the 6th Oceanic Literacy Principle, in which illustrator Inés Vázquez and scientist Jesús Troncoso beautifully represent the merle ecosystem in the Rio de Vigo. During 22 pandemic, 12 illustrators from Spain and Portugal joined forces with 12 researchers from Campus do Mar to promote ocean literacy, particularly among children. They created a coloring book to explain ocean concepts as an alternative to traditional Disney and Marvel coloring books, that were used in the long days of the pandemics to help fathers to entertain their children. Each page have a QR code linked to the information to an informative talk where parents could learn about the lamina's basic concept and explain there more accurately. There are other forms of collaboration between artists and scientists beyond graphic design. Ocean Challenges Female Scientist in Charge is a 6-episode documentary miniseries. It showcases the research conducted by female scientists around 6 ocean challenges and their personal life struggle to deal with them. It runs parallel to a school challenge in which students must produce a small video themselves on one of those topics. The winners get to spend a few days on the lab with the scientist. Gamification offers, by the other hand, a fantastic chance for ocean literacy by incorporating interactive elements, making ocean education engaging and enjoyable. As an example, Mission Azul, an ocean-themed video game designed to teach marine conservation and environment awareness in an entertaining manner. This initiative also includes conferences and discussion in schools, along with comprehensive teaching materials to facilitate classroom conversations for educators. Other forms play a crucial role in conveying science, like ethnographic arts, often igniting intense art-based activism. Blue Fear is a captivating performance that explores the emotional impact of climate change in coastal communities worldwide. Performed during the European Night of Researchers, that is a couple of weeks ago, this emotionally charged choreography was crafted by Xochitl Elias, a PhD student who collaborated closely with coastal communities in Japan, Mexico, and Galicia during her PhD. This is a unique example of a scientist also embracing the role of an artist, aiming to stir consciousness from within through this powerful performance. Urban art, like the Surfing Walls project that we have with the Port of Vigo, is capable of rejuvenating buildings. This project, celebrating the June decade of the ocean, unites muralist Delio Rodriguez with team scientists and the Port of Vigo to show methods and scales of observation in marine science. The wall is being painted as we speak. You can see the works on your way to the city center if you want this afternoon. Still in the first few days, but in a couple of weeks, I think we'll have it completed. Of particular significance also in this kind of connection are the emerging trends in eco-art and cultural diversity on ocean conservation. South African artist Porky Heifer creates large-scale sculptures of endangered animals using recycled materials and indigenous skills to celebrate Africa's rich cultural heritage. The famous crochet coral reef nature culture hybrid created by Margaret and Christine Wertheim links art, science, mathematics, community practice, and climate change with the ocean. At this time, there are 50 community-based satellite reefs worldwide. I think that I have tried to illustrate how the role of art in science communication have changed from mere visually pleasing representations to today's intricate relationship between art, science, technology, and society. Much of this interplay has taken place over the last 2 decades, with many authors referring that there are a few pivotal events that have profoundly transformed this relationship. One of them was the 2008 economic crisis that intensified the interactions between artists and scientists, converging in a new arena of the urgent need to explain science expenditure and the associated necessity of clearing or explaining complex global issues, particularly the environmental emergency. Additionally, it prompted ethical and philosophical exploration of social concerns, such as diversity. Then, in 2020, the global pandemic accelerated the growth of digital media and interdisciplinary collaboration. It also gave rise to a new generation that has reshaped communication channels. By 2022, there is a well-established civic engagement and constructive dialogue between the prioritized culturally sensitive science outreach to enhance inclusivity, equity, and diversity. This is still today a talent, and that include migrant scientists that can bring cultural sensitive science outreach, whilst migrant school children can be taught STEM at the same time as language. Understanding the impact of outreach, our outreach effort is critical to navigate this evolving communication landscape effectively. This slide illustrates the structure of public interest in major topics. I think I cannot, no, yeah, it's not possible to point, yeah. The first thing that is important in this diagram is that health has taken prominent position, replacing employment as the dominant topic by the end of the 2008 crisis. Well, all this information is from the white paper of the FECIT on this particular topic. Yeah. The crisis has led to increased interest in science and technology, while interest in the environment and ecology has declined, and that is very important for us, I think. However, the interest in both groups is similar and slowly decreasing when it comes to environmental and ecological topics. And the two groups that I refer is there is a split between the interest of women and the interest of men, where women are more interested in health issues, men are more interested in science and technology. But both groups show a slowly decline interest in environmental and ecology. And this all is happening because the youngest demographic sector in this diagram is having a strong interest in science and technology. And this is an important thing that we need to understand, that is the new generation who are pushing the interest, and the ones that we have to attend to create the right channels or to use the right channels of communication. In this second diagram, there is an expression. Yeah, I'm finishing. Yeah, there is an expression of where everyone gets the information about science and technology. And mostly is now from internet and TV. That is what this diagram is reflecting. And within internet, we have a dominance of social media and video platforms. That is also very important channels that we have to address when we communicate science. The other important thing is that this change is being again changed by a very young part of the demographics that have switched completely to internet, leaving TV behind also. And that is something that we have to do. Finally, I would like so the question that comes now is how we measure the impact of the communication that we do. And I have used this example with the Mission Azul video game. And there are two types of impacts that we measure. On one side, we measure personal impact. So this is the impact or the interaction that we have personally with the people involved in the presentations, the dissemination events, and the educational institutions that we visit. And that was 135 in 1 year. And the other is the impact the virtual impact, the impact that is produced because the people visit the project website, the video game downloads, the educational units downloads, and the followers and interaction on the social networks. And that is to 23,000. And that is telling us a message, what is the channels that we have to use to produce impact. And we, of course, cannot obviate qualitative impact, and all these metrics of direct interaction has to be modulated by interviews with the students, with the teaching staff, and with discussion groups to interpret them correctly and make the communication effective. Yeah. So these are my conclusions. Yeah. So there has been an important change in the relations between science, art, technology, and society. This change has produced or has been occurring mostly over the 21st century, that is in the last 20 years. And this phenomenon is fueled by technological advancement, interdisciplinary collaboration, and improved communication, and focused mostly in global challenges such as climate crisis and pandemics. This has generated, stimulated innovation, promoted creative expression, and facilitated a deeper understanding of complex issues, and is a vital force in our interconnected world. So what we need to attend now is to further promotion of civic engagement and dialogue, prioritizing cultural, sensitive science outreach to enhance inclusivity, equity, diversity, and also something that starts to emerge now, that is disability. Yeah. So the final conclusion is, additionally, we need to assess the impact of these outreach efforts, which is something crucial to navigate this new communication landscape effectively. And that is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your excellent presentation. Very comprehensive. I would highlight the different relationships between art and ocean. How has been used over time, since old times, and this made me remember my time at school when we still had books, by the way, and not internet, and we were looking at these books with very innovative and imaginative ways, I would say, to represent, even in 3D in some cases, very complex concepts. I'm thinking about the human body, other biological aspects, animals, etc. So yeah, it was very nice because it made me go back in time and remember that art was already used to help explain and express complex concepts. So very, very interesting also to see how art is used today to influence and the evolution that it has suffered in the last 20 years, very much important. Also that youth is very much engaged and the driver of this relationship between art and youth, and science, sorry, which is exactly one of the target groups that we are trying to address and to change behavior, because they will be the future leaders and those that will inherit our planet. So it's very much a very fortunate coincidence that these things are happening. So it's very good to see that. And one aspect that particularly caught my eye, that probably went under the radar, was how art can be used to make knowledge more inclusive. And this for me is particularly important. Finally, the aspects about impact assessment, and I thank you for that, for your comprehensive presentation. Thank you very much, Danielle. So we move on to the next phase of our panel, and I would then invite the panelists, which will be Sonia Levi, please. So Sonia is an artist operating at the confluence of knowledge practices and attempting to interrogate Western expansionist and extraction logics. 2023-24 European Marine Board Artist in Residence, Embracing the Ocean. And her work was screened and exhibited at Centre Pompidou, among others. The next one is Letizia Artioli. So Letizia has a PhD in architecture, is a PhD architecture candidate at IUAV University and Mart Science at KABK. She is a founder of the Venice Climate Change Pavilion and Youth for Ocean Forum member, and she's investigating the relationship between human beings and environmental data as a matter for research and creation. Last but not least, Guillaume Lheureux. So Guillaume has a master's degree in economics, is interested in social justice and democratic innovation. He is a social innovation project officer at the Nausicaa Aquarium and a facilitator of European Commission's Youth for Ocean Forum. So welcome, welcome all. And I would start by remembering that we have an empty chair system, and I'd really be very much pleased that you would come forward, and I'm sure you have plenty of questions to our panelists. So please don't be shy, just join the first row and I will call you. And maybe I would start with a question to Sonia. And the question would be, in your current project, you bring the perspective from below to act as a catalyst for co-creating strategies for the better management. Can you explain how that works and tell us how art can drive change? I don't think they can.
No? Yes. Hi. First of all, yes, it works. Okay, great. First of all, thank you, Sergio. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you, the EMB, for inviting me to present my work. And I had actually prepared a little presentation to perhaps describe what that means, rather than, yeah, with a little example as well. So if that's okay, I will just do that. So as Sergio was mentioning, I am an artist filmmaker, and I'm currently one of the participating artists in the EMB Artists in Residency program, Embracing the Ocean. And my project revolves around the Venetian Lagoon, which is, as we all know, an intertidal coastal environment infamous for flooding management controversies surrounding one of the world's most iconic and touristic cities. So in my film project, which is currently being shown at Museo Thyssen in Madrid until January, I explore a perspective from below the waterline in the Venetian Lagoon. So I borrow the concept of from below, from history from below, which is a form of historiography that focuses on ordinary and often marginalized people rather than those who hold power. So I attempted to expand this approach to shift perspective to the understanding of who makes history and to include more than human worlds as I encountered Venice from its world below the waves. So this methodology shaped my encounters with the lagoon, providing a framework to uncover other stories and explore alternative narratives as a response to Venice as a place dominated by grand histories of venture for world domination via often trade and wars. So furthermore, despite widespread awareness and countless solutions proposed for the challenges facing Venice and its lagoon, a significant point seemed to be the lack of a coordinated baseline for monitoring the lagoon and the pervasive impact of corruption. So these factors seems to me to have contributed to the difficulty in comprehending ongoing issues. So from below, therefore, also served as a means to know the fragile and turbulent worlds of the lagoon. So what do we learn when we turn our attention to Venice from below? So instead of presenting images today, I've brought an underwater sound recording, and I'd like to share this brief experience with you. So let's take a minute and listen to the recording. Constructed in the 30s during perhaps a lesser told part of Venice history, industrialization. The bridge symbolizes modernist yearnings for intense surveillance and relations. It was part of a program that profoundly reshaped the lifeways, including the reconfiguration of social class divisions between the island city and the mainland, as exposed by anthropologist Clara Zanardi. In addition to the low rumble of traffic that we heard, I hope you could hear it, but we can hear, because maybe the sound was not loud enough, but we are back here, but you can hear various crackling noises of oysters engaged in cultivation. Indeed, below this bridge lies a reef of fascinating in the 1960s to enhance industrial shellfish cultivation. These oysters have created arches. Furthermore, currents in which oyster lives, like water are changing the distribution effort to build new economic circulation. For example, the dredging of shipping channel to facilitate has resulted in alteration in flows, currents, and ways that are yet to. For instance, deeper channels have identified currents resulting in erosion, further sedimentation of the shelf at sea, accelerating organic boat traffic displaces sediment, which become resuspended in water, leading to heightened turbidity. These changes foster increased tension, aquatic and including filtered oysters. While the oyster seems to thrive by the they are emerging in places that combine rising temperatures and anoxic conditions during summer months may further impact water supply. Then again, another example of feedback spaces of the beach has unveiled a turbulent carbon environment where this alternative perspective offers documents revealing the complex interconnectedness with ecological worlds. By following how industrialization ecology can not only start comprehending the world, but also perhaps start paying attention to the profound relationality of
Thank you very much, Sonia, for putting the emphasis on the interaction between sound and ecosystem and all that works. Thank you very much. Very important point. I would move now to a question to Letizia. Letizia, your project and research make people experience environmental data. Can you explain how you do that and how this experience can drive change?
Can you hear me? Yes. So I think I will start by showing instead of talking. So I think I would like to start from what we are used and how we are used to see data. So can you see from the stripe below, for example, something that is an invisible yet very present in all our daily life indicator, which is air pollution. And this is how we are used also to see it, and also having the data representation. And in the part above is exactly the same data, just showed in a different way. So just to coming back of what Ursula and Daniel were pointing, a crisis of representation is a cultural crisis, is a crisis of interest, which means that we actually, now I will step to the second image, we need new languages, because from new languages, new ways of embedding the information, we start not just dialogues, but actually what we call knowledge. Because we all talk about data, we all talk about information, but actually knowledge is something that is way far more different, and I would say also liquid, instead of actually what we call the most symbolic and abstract and aseptic way that we try to shape information into. So we actually have data, we have a lot of data, we lack sometimes data, but the way we actually embed them, the way we embody them, the way we live them is actually something that right now it's becoming more and more urgent to work and to embed and live with. We constantly exchange information, like we are actually a matrix of data that technically, as we can see as human beings, we exchange constantly data with the environment. We are living turbulences of data, and this is exactly like two different ways of seeing the same data that we have. I would like just saying that it is very important maybe to rethink of the connection that we have. Like, to rethink a connection means also that you change the orders of the factors. So when you think of change and to have agents of change, then it also means that maybe from spectators we become actors. So if you give to the people actually the agency to be their own turbulence, to get to know what is exactly their influence in the space, to also to give voice to what we cannot hear, then the agents of change becomes actors and not spectators anymore. So this is just, I think, like with using less words possible, as you see. Words are very powerful, but when we empty them of their significance, then we start to see the urgency actually of new languages. And for new languages, we need new representation, new ways of communication. And then communication is just another emptied word that I would rather say it's about knowledge. It's about we need to embody and to be and to have this knowledge, and this knowledge is definitely liquid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Letizia. Thank you very much. I think we killed Microsoft Excel charts with this one. Now for serious, I really appreciated these new paradigms to express knowledge, and you are very much right. We need to move towards a direction where we represent actual knowledge and not just data. So thank you very much for these insights and for the lovely slides. And then I move to Guillaume. So Guillaume, can you explain how the Youth for Ocean Forum is contributing to a more ocean literate society and how its members are driving change, please?
Yeah, for sure. Do you hear me? Yeah, good. So the Youth for Ocean Forum is one of the three communities of the EU for Ocean Coalition, which is an initiative launched by the DG Mare to create a community of ocean literacy experts all around Europe. So there is three communities: the EU for Ocean platform, which gathers the organization and senior experts of ocean literacy. There is the Youth for Ocean Forum, which gathers young people from 16 to 30 years old who are acting for ocean literacy. And there is the network of blue schools. So why targeting the youth? So there is three major reasons for me to targeting the youth. First, there is a rising eco-anxiety feeling growing among the youth, and we need to give an answer to this. Secondly, there is a rising amount of false information and conspiracy theory that are rising among social networks and informations. And the more victim of this phenomenon is the young people aged of 13 years old. So we need to empower their role model to share to them scientifically reliable information. And thirdly, there is a gap that is growing between the generations, between the young and the senior experts, because the youth doesn't find in usual politics maybe the answer to their concern about the environment. And we cannot let this gap getting growing. So that's why we created the Youth for Ocean Forum. And with the forum, we are now accompanying more than 300 young people all around Europe who are running more than 80 ocean literacy projects. So now you can see 4 of them. The first one is I Am with LOAC. It's a novel created by Spanish early career ocean professionals to explain the impact of climate change on the ocean and especially on the corals. On the second picture, you can see one of the podcasts created by Eloise, one of our French members, where she is interviewing people who are working to protect the ocean. On the third pictures, this is the Marine Diaries. We are creating content in social networks to raise awareness about the ocean. And on the fourth pictures, you can see the girls from Enquête de Vague, who make a video report of travels they made by bike when they were 16 years old, where they are interviewing people who are protecting the sea. So this is four of projects, but we have many more. And what we do in the Youth for Ocean Forum to help them. So we help to make them project grow. We help them to put the light on their project. We help them to get the credibility they deserve. So it can help them to find new partners, local partners, because they have the legitimacy of being recognized by the European Commission. And also we give them the opportunity to talk for the generations. So this happens during international conferences where we try to make them speak for their generation. And what we have seen during this kind of presentation is the different impact the youth can have in such conferences. Because the size of their project is a more human size, a more personal way of doing projects, this let the emotion comes to the room. This bring back the human in the room of such conferences. And it's have a really huge impact. So this is how we see as we saw that we had a role to play, how we can be an agent of changes. So that's why we have created a new methodology of workshop during these international conferences to bring back the human side back in the conferences. So we have created a methodology where we invite experts, young and senior experts on an equal level to share their stories, their inspiring stories about the oceans. And then we break the barrier between the speakers of the room and the audience by making them working together in small groups on a question related to the oceans, inspired by the presentation made before. And then we're finishing the session by speed dating networking, so people can continue to work together after the sessions. So these sessions have happened 4 times, and in the UN Ocean Conference 2025, we have a huge success with a room full and more than 120,000 people online. So we decided to go further with next year the launch of a global youth consultation in preparation of the UN Ocean Conference 2025 in Nice. So we would like with this conference to map the concern of the youth about the ocean, but also the solutions to this concern that they would like to highlight and create together a new innovative tool about ocean literacy to help everyone to act for the ocean. So if you're interested to take part to this initiative, don't hesitate to come to talk to me after the session.
Thank you, Guillaume. Thank you very much. I would highlight maybe the new methodology for workshops where you bring together different generations. I think this is very much important to share experiences, to share information. And it's also a way to empower youth, which is something that we are trying to achieve. And this pleases me very much. So thank you for that. So now is the time for the audience to shine. I don't see anyone here yet. I will count to 3 and then I will start picking from the audience. So we have roughly 25 minutes. So please. Oh, we have 2 volunteers. Please join us. Those that are willing to interact with the well, maybe I invite you right away and the lady can stay there. And we, as you can see, we have many more chairs for all of you. So please don't be shy.
Hello,
Please
everyone.
introduce
Thank
yourself
you.
and present us our views and throw some questions.
Hello, everyone. I'm Giorgio Vingiani, Italian project manager of EurOCEAN Research Infrastructure, but I'm here as a local actor and playwright. I really thank you for this interesting panel that gives us new insights on how art and science can collaborate. So I have a question a bit, because Ursula, you say something really inspiring, that art is not a tool, it's an aesthetic medium. Now, let's see, this is true, but at the same time, it's true that art can create engagement through feelings and emotions, and this, in shaping the public engagement through ocean literacy, it's faster and stronger than any scientific paper or brief. And I mean, when art is encapsulated to give a unique and unilateral message, even if it's the most powerful and right one, it risks that its impact could be short-lived, and you need to revamp that over and over with similar activities. So science can use art to reach effectively public, but art don't really like to be used. So how can we create a better cooperation between art? How can we work shoulder to shoulder with the artist while not influencing that with the truth and with our data? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is a really fascinating question. I think one way is to just adjust our expectations of art. So yes, art is a powerful mode of communication, can be used as a powerful tool, but you cannot expect, or well, you can, but it would limit the influence of art if you just expected it to do one thing. I think once you let art onto the stage, you need to accept that it can do many things and not necessarily what you want it to do, and really accept the proliferation of meanings that and use that, I think, powerfully in enabling new conversations that you might not have anticipated. So I think to some extent, art can work as an instigator in a system that allows you to come up with non-anticipated knowledge or effects.
Is there any other? Sonia, please.
Yes, I just wanted to add something also about perhaps thinking about the multiplication of knowledge rather than thinking about through one medium, but how different knowledge can come together and how artistic art is a form of knowledge. So perhaps it's more about braiding those different ways of looking at the world rather than reinforcing one. And I also think that art is really good at perhaps bringing question and stirring up established paradigms. And I think it's really important to also always keep that sort of criticality alive in general. And I think within Ursula talk, we saw that very, very well also with this idea of like, what kind of story we tell our world with, right? And should we use the same stories? And so, yeah, I would try also to think about this kind of thing and who voices to as well. Yeah.
I think that also when you talk about art science, like that they are shouldering each other, it's more rather than they have a constant exchange, like it's actually immediate. So you don't have to think about like some knowledge that goes from one to the other or then gets translated. It's exactly something that, yeah, it flows, and it is in a kind of way amorphous yet defined. So you open up possibility of interpretation, but for example, science, when it really flows into art, it gives it consistency. It means that it becomes also that through a subjective or variety of different mediums and opening up perception, you actually have a background of the most objective knowledge possible that actually wants to be transmitted and also re-elaborated in order also in a way to find maybe some solutions and perspective that doesn't come from the compartmentalization of the knowledge from where we come from. So I think it's more that it's actually the connection between the two, that it's itself something in the between.
Yeah, and before you leave, George, maybe I can add another question. Don't go so quickly because I only have another one. So, but I'd like to ask a question, which is, so we have seen different types of art here. We have seen actual works of art, like those books that you have shown, Ursula, but we have also seen resorting to artistic ways of expressing knowledge. And I think these are two very different ways of using art. And whereas one, I'm referring to the books and sorry about that. Whereas one, which are the works of art, of course, or films, we are not willing to repeat them ad nausea because they will lose effect. The others, on the other hand, we are very much willing to reuse them if they are actually effective, like the can I call them charts that we have seen. So I even miss a word for that. Maybe Ursula can help with that. So so I think what you have said, which is right, nevertheless, has two different interpretations. Would you like any of you to comment on this?
Yes, I think that there is something that is very important in this connection, that are emotions. And emotions and intelligent emotion is something that we have to appeal to when we want to transmit an idea. There are pictures, like some of the ones that I projected, and many other examples that you can think of something that have provoked an emotion in you, and you have experienced and explored that work or art for decades, because you find the pigments that were used for the painting, you found the context in which the picture was painted, and that is with visual art without having any ulterior development. But now technology and interaction between artists and scientists is much greater. There are many things involved, and one of the things is they are interested in some of the technological advances of the way that we use, that they can use to produce up-to works, and we are interested in the result, and they also influence us in the way that where we present data, as Letizia have done. So this continuous interaction between artists, scientists, technology, and now the integration of society, which is very important, all the ethical questions that we have to ask ourselves all the time and to interpel to other people, that is also very fundamental, because there is a way through science and through art that have ethical and moral, political implications that are very serious in the way in which we deliver the information, even, yeah? What that information is being used for, and how it can be twisted to promote a certain idea or views. There is not something like a true and unique interpretation of a data or a work of art, but we can agree on some ethical fundamental principles that can facilitate a more justice society. That is something that we have an aspiration or, and that is something that is within the spirit, I think, that every researcher and every artist, and that interest to pursuing emotion and that kind of intellectual conception of the world is something that is very fundamental in this connection. It's not such a representing a particular data, but something like representing an idea of something in which both art and science has contributed to. I think
Thank you, Daniel. I see Ursula is willing to jump on this. Ursula?
Sorry. Yes, I think I would just underline that you know, these are not straightforward channels. They can complement each other, they can aid each other, but we need to be open to different ways of readings. For instance, you know, when you showed, Daniel, this computer game, what I saw was a very, for me, straightforward or clear reference to a Victorian cartoon I'm very familiar with. You know, so I don't think perhaps some English colleagues here might have seen that as well, because it's a famous cartoon. But yeah, you know, I think our backgrounds, our aesthetic formations, etc., allow us to see different things, and that can be very useful. Can also be counterproductive in some context. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George. Thank you so much. Next, please. And you still have time to join the front row.
Hello, my name is Pavlina Podholova, and I'm a marine scientist from the Royal Belgium Institute of Natural Sciences in Belgium. And actually, Sergio stole my question. but I will try to ask maybe a bit differently. So indeed, art is an incredible medium, and the beauty of it is that it can be interpreted in a different ways. Everyone can see it a bit differently. And recently I attended an event where there was a combination of an art and a science. There was this scientific panel and also part with poetry. And the poetry combined scientific facts and also imagination of the author, very abstract statements. But these abstract statements actually led to confusion of the audience, what is actually real, what is the truth, and what is just the imagination of the author. So I want to ask you if you think that with this increasing combination of science and art, if you think there is going to be an increase of this confusion or an misinterpretation as well, and how to maybe avoid it, and what are your ideas on this topic?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone willing to address this challenging question? Looks like art as an instrument of change is a kind of thing that, well, we don't quite control, right? So we don't control the artists and we don't control the targets because they can take it in any way that they think of. So we are relying on an agent of change that we cannot control. Is this provocative enough or not?
Yeah, well, I can have just an example like that. It's linked to what you just said. So maybe in that case, the confusion would be actually the main concept that you want to experience. Because, for example, if you talk about, especially in this contemporary moment, about deep fakes, about fake news, about truth, and then about information, then maybe exactly the result of confusion or asking yourself or the audience asking questions is the desired result and output that you cannot control. But in this moment, actually the blue-red effect that you get, if you cannot control it, but yet if you know what you're doing and why you are doing it, and that comes to the also like to wanting to provoke emotions is a huge responsibility, and wanting to transmit knowledge is also a huge responsibility. So whether it comes to awareness, also when you have the aim of this transmission, maybe specifically linked to the confusion and the contemporary, when we have an access to so many information without a guide, then maybe this is exactly where we should be tackling it. Talking about the fact that putting humans in the position of asking questions. So you don't give answers, but you give actually the method of asking questions. Because if there is the confusion and confusion is the output, then sometimes, especially for some intricate questions and complex issues such as climate change, you do not have just one answer. You need more questions, and you need questions put in a different way from a different perspective. So actually the confusion as an output needs to be taken into account as actually a mighty output that can actually lead to knowledge in that sense. But it needs to be taken into account, like we know what are we doing and why, because of transmissions of emotion and knowledge as a huge responsibility.
Yeah, I can absolutely second that. I think Leticia has basically said it all. I think, especially, in climate science, to be able to experience and reflect on confusion in such a setting might actually be a very useful effect, and one, that tells us a lot about the world or the information we're faced with. Also, I think it would be, again, another caveat perhaps, that art, or even, something that might seem as innocuous as just pictures that might support what you think you're trying to say, should not be used naively, but the framing is very important when you use art, that you really need to make sure you get this right and that you use pictures, for instance, in an informed way, so that you know what you're doing. Because, I mean, you have, Sergio, you have said that a few times, you know, the emotion that can be tapped into through images, verbal images and visual images is enormous, and we need to be aware of that.
Thank you for that. We still have some room. Thank you very much for your tough question. Is there anyone else willing to join the empty chair? Otherwise, I will start asking wild card questions, and these guys, they will start sweating. So no one else? Okay, so now it's going to be fun. So I'm out of questions, so now. So what you have been saying is very much interesting, but this implies that if we use art to ask questions instead of providing direct answers, this means that the audience will need to have critical thinking, right? But more and more, it seems that people are, and I'm being provocative here, getting lazier and lazier. They want fast information, ready to consume information. They don't want to think too much about things. They want people to think for them, right? Don't you feel this? So are we thinking of using an instrument of change that is countercurrent to the way that our society is heading? Sorry, was I too tough? I told you guys. Daniel, I was betting on you.
Yeah, I will leave you alone. Yeah, I think it's a matter of choosing the right channel to reach people, and that is very important. And the thing is to see who we want to reach and how we want to reach them. And that is very important because the channels of communication are changing very rapidly, but they've been changing all the time through human history, and we have learned how to use them to convey the right and the proper messages. I think the provocation can be done from literature, can be done from any other expression, artistic way of expression, and consequently, the answer and the critical thinking is something fundamental. So we come back to something that was said here in the other panel that we are forgetting. I put many images of how we work with high schools, but education is some fundamental things that many times we miss. And if we do not develop a rich enough cultural background of critical thinking and basic truthful information, we will never be able to convey any message because we are speaking in a language that can be read in any other way different from what we try to say. And that is, I think that is important. I don't know if that, but education again is something very important.
Thank you very much, Danielle. That's it, absolutely. Please, Sonia.
Yeah, maybe I would turn around your question, which is more actually is the work is, or at least I wish with the work to create a form of critical thinking that maybe not necessarily is existing prior to watching the work. So yeah.
Thank you, Sonia. Leticia, would you like to share something?
Well, yeah, maybe I will just follow the wave of provocativeness. Like, why wouldn't we be provocative in these urgent times? I think it's quite important. Maybe it's exactly this. Isn't it necessary and urgent to think as people, not as consumers? Like, but bringing them back of the layering that before being like a consumer, you are a citizen. So you have responsibility and you have rights, and then you are a human being, and then you are a being. So you breathe, why you breathe, how you breathe. Like, I think I will directly tackle this through that, to not treat people as consumers, but people are people. and with all that this brings, I would say.
It's a very good point, Leticia. I think we have a gentleman that would like to share his thoughts with us.
Well, I am Jose Pintado from the Institute of Marine Research here in Vigo. I am the Deputy Director for engagement with society, so I am concerned. And well, most of the things I was going to talk about, they were already said. So I will say that science and art are two ways of knowledge, of access to knowledge. Knowledge as a mental representation of reality that can be transferred from one mind to another mind. So I would say that science has this language that is in one direction, and art has many ways. It's polysemic. So to tackle the challenge that we have now, we have to promote change, as you said. And it's not just using art to communicate science, it's to go together to promote change, to generate knowledge from both sides. So art, in some sense, makes a society more conscious of the problems that science have put in evidence. And your conference in water about literature and water made me remember a poem of Emily Dickinson that is "Water is taught by thirst." This image is so powerful that is more powerful than explaining the molecule of water and why water is so fundamental for life, and the loss, how if we don't have something we need. No? So I think that this is the real aim, to go together. And about education that to talk about, we are trying to bring together something that we split at school. I mean, the problem is that still education has two different ways to access to knowledge, that very early there are people that doing science, people that doing arts and literature. And this is something that you have to think about that, because probably the future is not using or managing with one or the other, but to work together with both. So this is a general reflection on our question of anyone wants to say.
And it's a great reflection to end the panel because we are just on time. Thank you very much. I retain the main message of your intervention, which was art and science need to go hand in hand. So I would end the panel with this. Thank you very much to all the panelists. I was really, really pleased by and honored by chairing this panel. And I was really even a bit emotional about some things that I've seen here and that made me go back in time. So thank you very much for your presence here. I hope they had more or less the same impact in the audience. And thank you for the Marine Board for organizing this fantastic conference with the rest of the partners and of course all the partners in Vigo. Thank you very much. Yeah. I would just make some final remarks before you go. So I kindly ask the panelists to stay with me for a photo shoot. So we are having another session. The next session is called What's Next? Rallying Actions for Ocean and Waters, which will start at 1600 after a short break. And in the meantime, I invite you to enjoy the exhibition supported by the Marine Research Center of the University of Vigo and Campos do Mar, while you enjoy the short coffee break sponsored by the European Commission. Thank you very much.
I wanna take a trip with you. Down by the beach in Malibu. I wanna go anywhere with you. Walking on the cliffside, sleeping on the starlight. I wanna take a trip with you. Down by the beach in Malibu. I wanna go anywhere with you. Walking on the cliffside, sleeping on the starlight, and I will go. Walking on the cliffside, sleeping on the starlight, and I will go. I wanna take a trip with you. Down by the beach in Malibu.
Working with time as a concept, it becomes very apparent that time needs a historical gaze to be perceived as the time we know it now, as past, present, and future. It's very difficult talking about a Thursday a million years ago. That's an abstract format, and that's really interesting when it then comes to deep time. The impact that we are doing now happens so fast, but then also what are we a part of actually?
And how can looking at and reconnecting with deep time, can that help guide us into maybe different directions into the future? Can it maybe excite us? Can it maybe calm us? Can it maybe scare us? What can we learn from it? Last summer, we were invited by an art historian called Mikkel Kjær. He was invited onto a Norwegian scientific cruise where he wanted to basically observe artists and scientists working together to explore what kind of knowledge and experience can that intersection create.
Historically, artists have been on these types of cruises quite a long time with abilities to draw plants or draw animals. But this is in some ways a new way to work together because we're exploring as they're exploring as well. So we are not translating what they find into an aesthetic or visual representation, but are trying to conduct our own aesthetic research with them as well. Oh, there's a bunch of good stuff here.
Yeah, I still remember when we met very clearly because it was these two artists invited to join a scientific expedition. I have been at sea many times and I know what does it mean to be on a boat. And this boat particularly, because this is a big boat. There are a lot of decks, there are a lot of corridors, a lot of cabins, and a lot of instruments. And yeah, you get lost very easily. They were curious about what we were doing, so what the scientists were doing. And I was very curious to know what they were doing. And we met there. I think it was our curiosity and also the will to really discover something else. For example, I was showing them the plankton net. You can take samples of organisms from the water, and then I show them the instrument that I generally use, which is a gravity corer, which is a long cylinder of steel, and we use it to bring up the sediment from the seafloor. I'm interested in going back in time and see what has happened 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, and so on. And they were interested to know how these sediments can tell me the history of our ocean.
We were lucky enough to get 217 centimeters worth of sediment back up, which Juliana says dates back to 12,000 years. We were then able to divide that into 11 packages, which corresponded to different geological time. We found it so interesting that we could have come in contact with 12,000 years ago, the organic material, the life, the death, the decaying. Again, we still didn't know what we would do with it, but we packed it up and brought it back to Denmark. And then we had an exhibition coming up at a glass museum where it was also an open-ended research with the glass blowers. So one of the days we just told the glass blower, Chris, we said, well, we have this 12,000-year-old sediment. Maybe we'll dry it up, make it into some powder. Can you put it in the glass and see what happens?
What we are doing now here, we are basically trapping in the glass geological processes that is invisible to our eyes. This is something that occurs inside the magma chambers. So you are basically freezing in time geological processes, which is impossible to see.
You're basically God, right?
Yes, you are. You have the planet in your hands.
We learned from the scientists that a lot of the sediment falling down is from the water column is organic material, also comprised of silicate. All of the algae or the shells, crustaceans, their shells are silicate, and silicate is the main component of glass. So is there a connection between the living species and a rock formation like glass? And are we connected as such as living to the geological time as well? That gave such an insight into the connection between the living and the soil that we come from.
This sample has not been dried, so it's still wet. Still have the bottom water. Still have the water from the ocean. And then what we did, we just put it in a sort of capsule, in a bubble. So the water basically evaporated, and then it was expanding. And yeah, we were very lucky because the glass didn't break. I even don't know how to explain it, actually. I never saw this. Yeah. Physical processes for real, encapsulating Arctic water in a glass bubble.
Right. That's what we've done there.
Sounds crazy. Yeah, it's really interesting. Now I'm going to bring some of those samples back in the lab. We are going to measure those samples, so we are going to understand which is the composition of this new material which has been created today. And I'm thinking how, for example, what we have done today can be repeated for scientific purposes, not for art, but for making scientific experiment to understand what is happening to this mineral.
We should try to understand if the minerals which we have used to prepare those glass cores have changed in composition, for example. So that's why we should do some scanning electron microscope today.
Yeah.
Juliana's research is very interesting in exploring these life in extreme environments, which I think for us philosophically gives a really nice humbling to our own human perspective. To be able to come into contact with this kind of deep time is very interesting. If you put your arms out, the edge of your very edge of your the fingertips, your nails, that is human existence. So the planet has been around for a really long time. Species have evolved. Species have gone through multiple extinctions, multiple climate changes. For us humans, it's maybe the first. And so that's why we don't know what to do.
Being inspired by the scientists and their research, we learned that facts and compartmentalizations or categories are arbitrary because everything spills into each other. Can we get to a full picture of what the world is through science, or do we need to also take care of the relationship to it to get that that image or that connection to the natural world around us?
We really like working in the intersection between arts and science because learning about through scientific knowledge that we share more DNA, for example, across species, we can use that as a metaphor to maybe think differently, or the fact that mushrooms have 28,000 genders. We can maybe use that then in queer politics and queer theory to again question what is this obsession with thinking binaries and dichotomies and what is natural and what is normal. So for us, we really like working with the natural sciences to use that as metaphors for us to think philosophically.
This has changed the way in which I see the geological processes that I'm observing. I was used to see them like numbers to obtain. I think now I'm more sensible to what I'm observing. I think I will be more careful also in taking my samples, because every time that we take a sample, we destroy, we damage, we touch, we take away. When I see the Arctic seafloor, I see it differently. But, and I don't know why, maybe this is very stupid, but I look at it with more respect. I thought that what I was observing was an expression of geological processes, but now I see as an expression of some artistic processes also. This is something that has changed, and maybe there will be other things that I see different in the future. I don't know yet. I'm happy to discover it.
Working with time as a concept, it becomes very apparent that time needs a historical gaze to be perceived as the time we know it now as past, present, and future. It's very difficult talking about a Thursday a million years ago. That's an abstract format, and that's really interesting when it comes to deep time. The impact that we are doing now happens so fast, but then also what are we a part of actually?
And how can looking at and reconnecting with deep time, can that help guide us into maybe different directions into the future? Can it maybe excite us? Can it maybe calm us? Can it maybe scare us? What can we learn from it? Last summer, we were invited by an art historian called Mikkel Kjær. He was invited onto a Norwegian scientific cruise where he wanted to basically observe artists and scientists working together to explore what kind of knowledge and experience can that intersection create.
Historically, artists have been on these types of cruises quite a long time with abilities to draw plants or draw animals. But this is in some ways a new way to work together because we're exploring as they're exploring as well. So we are not translating what they find into an aesthetic or visual representation, but are trying to conduct our own aesthetic research with them as well.
Wow, there's a bunch of good stuff here.
Yeah, I still remember when we met very clearly because it was these two artists invited to join a scientific expedition. I have been at sea many times and I know what does it mean to be on a boat. And this boat particularly, because this is a big boat. There are a lot of decks, there are a lot of corridors, a lot of cabins and a lot of instruments and yeah, you get lost very easily. They were curious about what we were doing, so what the scientists were doing. And I was very curious to know what they were doing. And we met there. I think it was our curiosity and also the will to really discover something else. For example, I was showing them the plankton net. You can take samples of organisms from the water. And then I show them the instrument that I generally use, which is a gravity corer, which is a long cylinder of steel. And we use it to bring up the sediment from the seafloor. I'm interested in going back in time and see what has happened 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, and so on. And they were interested to know how these sediments can tell me the history of our ocean.
We were lucky enough to get 217 centimeters worth of sediment back up, which Juliana says dates back to 12,000 years. We were then able to divide that into 11 packages, which corresponded to different geological time. We found it so interesting that we could have come in contact with 12,000 years ago, the organic material, the life, the death, the decaying. Again, we still didn't know what we would do with it, but we packed it up and brought it back to Denmark. And then we had an exhibition coming up at a glass museum where it was also an open-ended research with the glass blowers. So one of the days we just told the glass blower, Chris, we said, well, we have this 12,000-year-old sediment. Maybe we'll dry it up, make it into some powder. Can you put it in the glass and see what happens?
What we are doing now here, we are basically trapping in the glass geological processes that is invisible to our eyes. This is something that occurs inside the magma chambers. So you are basically freezing in time geological processes, which is impossible to see.
You're basically God, right?
Yes, you are. You have the planet in your hands.
We learned from the scientists that a lot of the sediment falling down is from the water column is organic material also comprised of silicate. All of the algae or the shells, crustaceans, their shells are silicate, and silicate is the main component of glass. So is there a connection between the living species and a rock formation like glass? And are we connected as such as living to the geological time as well? That gave such an insight into the connection between the living and the soil that we come from.
This sample has not been dried, so it's still wet. Still have the bottom water. Still have the water from the ocean. And then what we did, we just put it in a sort of capsule, in a bubble. So the water basically evaporated, and then it was expanding. And yeah, we were very lucky because the glass, it didn't break. I even don't know how to explain it, actually. Never saw this. Yeah. Physical processes for real, encapsulating Arctic water in a glass bubble.
Right. That's what we've done there.
Sounds crazy. Yeah, it's really interesting. And I'm going to bring some of those samples back in the lab. We are going to measure those samples, so we are going to understand which is the composition of this new material which has been created today. And I'm thinking how, for example, what we have done today can be repeated for scientific purposes, not for art, but for making scientific experiment to understand what is happening to this mineral.
We should try to understand if the minerals which we have used to prepare those glass cores have changed in composition, for example. So that's why we should do some scanning electron microscope today.
Yeah.
Juliana's research is very interesting in exploring these life in extreme environments, which I think for us philosophically gives a really nice humbling to our own human perspective. To be able to come into contact with this kind of deep time is very interesting. If you put your arms out, the edge of your, very edge of your the fingertips, your nails, that is human existence. So the planet has been around for a really long time. Species have evolved. Species have gone through multiple extinctions, multiple climate changes. For us humans, it's maybe the first. And so that's why we don't know what to do.
Being inspired by the scientists and their research, we learned that facts and compartmentalizations or categories are arbitrary because everything spills into each other. Can we get to a full picture of what the world is through science, or do we need to also take care of the relationship to it to get that that image or that connection to the natural world around us?
We really like working in the intersection between arts and science because learning about through scientific knowledge that we share more DNA, for example, across species, we can use that as a metaphor to maybe think differently, or the fact that mushrooms have 28,000 genders. We can maybe use that then in queer politics and queer theory to again question what is this obsession with thinking binaries and dichotomies and what is natural and what is normal. So for us, we really like working with the natural sciences to use that as metaphors for us to think philosophically.
This has changed the way in which I see the geological processes that I'm observing. I was used to see them like numbers to obtain. I think now I'm more sensible to what I'm observing, I think I will be more careful also in taking my samples, because every time that we take a sample, we destroy, we damage, we touch, we take away. When I see the Arctic sea floor, I see it differently. But, and I don't know why, maybe this is very stupid, but I look at it with more respect. I thought that what I was observing was an expression of geological processes, but now I see as an expression of some artistic processes also. This is something that has changed, and maybe there will be other things that I see different in the future. I don't know yet. I'm happy to discover it.
Falling into the fire, falling into the night. Closer than ever, gonna shine the light into the night. Not Tonight I'm gonna get you off my mind, get you off my mind, get you off my mind. Tonight the universe is on my side, heart is open wide, and everything's alright. I ain't gonna stop jumping over, jumping and I do, still want you back tomorrow. Tonight I'm gonna get you off my mind, get you off my mind, get you off my mind. I'm gonna get you off my mind, get you off my mind, get you off my mind. Tonight the universe is on my side, heart is open wide, and everything's alright. I ain't gonna stop jumping over, everything I do, still want you back tomorrow. Tonight I'm gonna get you off my mind, get you off my mind, get you off my mind. I just love the way you love me. Please don't ever change your ways. And I'll keep all my promises. Don't you go away. Just stay. Just stay. Just love the way. Don't ever change your way.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming back. So now we're going to have the signing of the Vigo Declaration, and I'm just going to ask the chairs of all of the different networks to come up and join me here on stage. So I'll ask Gilles Ledecray, Niall McDonough, Henning Wittke, Carlos Soto, and one more, Patricio, there we go, to please come and have a seat. Thank you very much. So we have got a very short intervention. You will have all, no, they can't decide how they want to sit. Thank you. All right, so now we're going to have a really short overview of the declaration. You will have all received a copy, or there's some copies on the back table of this declaration. They obviously haven't seen each other. They've been here for 2 days, but they haven't spoken to each other yet. So thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Sheila Heymans, the Executive Director of the European Marine Board. And for our sins, we were the ones leading this declaration, but it is a declaration of all of these networks. It is really representing the voice of all marine scientists from Europe. So I think it's probably one of the strongest declarations that I've come across, because we're speaking here with one voice. And really, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I'm just going to give you the highlights. So obviously we have 1 decade to accomplish the one mission that we have been given by the European Commission. And to do that, we really need one voice to achieve that one ocean that we need, that we want. So we have come together. We do actually acknowledge all of the work that's been done, you know, to achieve this. We understand that we want to provide transdisciplinary science-based policy advice, to provide advice to policymakers, everything from local to international level. We understand that equity and inclusion should be at the core of what we do, and that all actions that are undertaken already, you know, should be done in that way. So, oops, hold on. There we go. So we acknowledge the advances that's taken place from local to regional to European level to national level to international level through the mission, through the Ocean Decade. But in order to really achieve the climate neutrality, to reduce the pollution, and to restore the to restore nature, it will not be possible without ocean knowledge. And we talked quite a lot about different types of ocean knowledge through this conference. So it's quite important. So we, the science community, calls for a few things. We call for the integration of land and sea policies and management at European level, and at national level, and at regional level, and that these should ensure that, you know, we should ensure that integrated maritime policy is aligned with land policies for coherent adaptive management of the socio-ecological systems that addresses multiple stressors in our ecosystems. So that's the first thing. You can read more about it in the declaration. Second, obviously sustain a better coordinated ocean observations. We talked about that a lot today. We really need policymakers and science funders to understand that we need better coordination of these observations, and that it should be, I can't really read there very well, so I'm going to go this way. These are essential to support the essential role of coordinated ocean observations in order to deliver the ocean knowledge in an open, accessible, and fit for purpose way, and to enhance the European digital twin of the ocean. So I think that's the second thing that we call for that's really important. And then thirdly, we call for committed citizens. So science funders and scientific institutions should really understand that in order to do this, we should support the scientists and the people who actually provide this interactions. So we should support all forms of citizens' engagement, including ocean literacy, which we discussed before, science communication, citizen science, arts, but also other forms such as sporting events that actually includes ocean literacy. And we should ensure that we should do that to ensure the citizens' empathy towards the ocean to be able to engage in ocean sustainability fully. So that's, I think, all I'm going to say. You can download it if you haven't picked up a copy using the QR code, or you can read it online or read it in paper. And now I think I'm going to ask the chairs of the different networks to please sign the declaration over there. We'll start with Henning because he's the first one. And exit stage right when you're done. Thank you. Henning. Actually, you can't exit stage right. You can sit back down again because we're going to have to take a photo. Niall, thank you. Gilles, you're next in line. Carlos. That's it, Carlos. Thank you. And Patricio, thank you. Thank you very much. So that's it. Thank you. And I think we'll have a quick photo, and while we're doing that, we can get the next session ready. Yes. So quick photo. Everybody gets the whole. I don't know what happened to the photographer. He doesn't know that he's supposed to take a photo. During with his downloading. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys. Thanks.
Okay, it's me again. Sorry about that. It's the last session, the closing session. I think the name of the session is "What's Next?" and I think it's already important. We try to speak with one voice, work together. We had many associations, and it's not my last speech, but I would like to just to take this opportunity to recall. I had a long discussion yesterday with a young ambassador, and I can recognize that we had 5 men of the chair of the association, and we were not all very young. And I think we have things to do to follow their message and to try to arrive to what they expect. And it's going to be tough, I told you already, but don't be discouraged. Continue. It's only the good way to do. And that was the things. And I hope with the conclusion, we will have a nice vision and see what next to protect our ocean and waters. And of course, what will be next is what you will do of our ocean and waters. Because I will probably be a part of a dust floating in the water when the ocean will be back to what it has been, clean, sustainable, and useful. I will be dead, but I count on you to make it happen. Okay, so now we got to the next session, and I would like to call. Well, we start by Vladimir video message, and then after we will have our speaker present here on stage. Okay, so Vladimir.
Warm greetings from the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, the home of ocean sciences in the United Nations system. It's my great pleasure to speak to you after the declaration of the EurOCEAN and your partners has been announced. So I'd like to basically say that we are very much behind you, and we share and would like to speak one voice with you on such issues as integrated land sea policies and management, the need for sustained and better coordinated observations, and also to have our citizens committed and involved in much better relations with the ocean. So, you know, this all is embedded in the IOC work that is done through IOC functions. So we try to unite the work of many communities conducting ocean research, observations, transforming this into data, exchanging data, generating services, including tsunami warnings, providing information for assessments and policy that culminates in the sustainable ocean management and the governance. And of course, we cannot leave anyone behind. And because of that, the work of IOC is really centered around the capacity development. But the foundations for this is definitely data. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. So now we are moving forward from, as IOC, from an organization that was supposed to be providing platform for communication, basically general cooperation between oceanographers from various political systems, into an organization that is supposed to be addressing critical issues for humanity of existential nature. And of course, this is about ocean management. Because of that, I'm very much in favor of integrating many types of ocean management, including the management from source to sea. That is what is coded here in terms of the words integrated land sea policies and management. And this is indeed a way forward for us to unite our important experiences in coastal zone management and adaptation in developing sustainable ocean economy through maritime spatial planning, different ways of protecting the ocean in the high seas beyond exclusive economic zones and within exclusive economic zones, contributing to the management of fishery and aquaculture, working with adaptation mitigation of climate change, which is also, as the recent report of the World Resources Institute showed, is able to contribute 25% to the reduction of carbon dioxide emissions, and then of course developing policies, real-time services, capacity, and providing early warning systems. So, you know, this is also manifested through us in the work of the decade. The purpose of the decade and the vision is basically to create the science we need for the ocean we want, and we have a clear vision for the ocean we want that is clean, healthy, resilient, productive, predictive, safe, accessible, but most importantly, inspiring and engaging. That the person who proposed this remains unknown to us, but this was a huge contribution to planning of the decade, and this helps us to actually engage everyone, including citizens, in addressing the decade challenges on pollution, on ecosystems, on food from the ocean, ocean economy, again, climate, but also very importantly, observing system, and also ocean digital representation. Europe is very much committed to creating a digital twin of the ocean. And this is a very important thing, because if we have a digital twin that's presenting to us the past, current, and future state of the ocean, then we'll be able to take decisions that are based on that quantitative information about the state of the ocean. Such decisions are much more reliable, much less arbitrary, and it will be much more difficult for decision makers to actually address their group interest while you have a clear evidence of what will be the consequences of this decision expressed in the digital twin of the ocean. So the decade is moving forward, and I have to say that when in 2016 we proposed the idea of the decade, it was just shared by a few people. Now we have a lot of people working for the decade. We have 48 programs, 276 projects, 60 countries involved, more than 3,500 organizations. So this is a total new level of ocean sciences focused on sustainability of the ocean. And this is also an ecosystem. This is an ecosystem of scientists, governments, industry, philanthropy, non-governmental organizations, holders of indigenous knowledge, United Nations organizations, you name it. So more than 35,000 of individuals participate in the decade, and EurOCEAN is a very important part of that. Your community is really leading on several activities. I have to say, what unites us all is the notion of co-design, the notion that we need to add to the technocratic science also the science that is based on ethical principles, the principles of fairness, and that combination of tangible and intangible qualities really makes a huge difference. And we are moving forward the science that is totally new. It's transformative science that is going to help us to actually develop our relations with the ocean in much more harmonious ways. So in that sense, I have to say that the 10-decade challenges now resulted in many programs that focus on them. And I would like to say that observations community is the leader. We also have strong focus on ocean and climate. Digital ecosystem also is represented quite well, despite they don't have too many programs. But you know, we need probably not too many of them because we need to compare digital twins of the ocean. So all of this is helping us to contribute to the ocean economy. There will be more focus on this in the future, and of course contribute to the behavior change, which is only possible when we involve not only governments and scientists but also citizens in this work. So this is exactly why I also very strongly support your declaration that is focusing on all these really seminal developments. Now, let me very briefly introduce to you the way forward. The decade is now 3 years old, and we started the process of designing how we can look at where we are. I already presented to you how many programs are populating different challenges of the decade, and now we can state that we are moving forward. Probably not as consolidated as needed, but we are moving forward. And the new process that was proposed very recently, the Vision 2030, is going to review what is the success of the programs and the challenges of the decade, how we can see it in 2030 for each of the 10 challenges. What is missing? What we can really achieve. So we will set our global priorities. We'll present these priorities in the decade conference that is going to be in Barcelona at in April 2024. And having looked at this, providing for you a platform for co-design, further co-design of your activities, we will then start affecting the process that exists in the United Nations in relation to the ocean. The preparatory conference in Costa Rica, the One Ocean Science Conference that is going to immediately precede One Ocean United Nations Ocean Conference in 2025 in Nice, and then hopefully the Conference of United Nations on the Ocean in Nice in June 2025 will result in very strong decision support of ocean management that is based on science. This is basically the vision that was enabled by Ocean Decade, by the work of EurOCEAN, and by the work of partners such as EurOCEAN. Once again, I very much support your declaration. I may very much appreciate what you do. Thank you for this, and also let me wish you successful continuation of our joint work towards the ocean we need for the future we want. All the best, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Vladimir. Thank you very much to the IOC and to UNESCO to bring that in the decades. I have to admit, I've been working on that when I started to try to bring the IOC at a higher level and having a higher visibility. Together with Ed in the group one of the IOC and Alan, we've been trying to have this vision to bring the IOC at a higher level and bring the ocean in a bigger vision. And so they have implementation plan. And again, for the young generation, before going to new strategy, you see the old work on strategy and declaration, ask before if there are implementation plan and ask where and how they have been implemented. because sometimes, you know, to make strategy, they have an implementation plan and they forgot they have an implementation plan and they redo a new strategy and a new implementation plan and a new strategy and a new implementation plan and nothing is implemented. So you have to really think about that. So now with this message, I would like to call on stage the next speaker. So Francisco Saborido. He is a director of the Institute of Marine Research and he also represents the complementary plan for marine science of Galicia. Francisco, if you can take a seat first. So I bring all the people and I will bring you to the Javier Ruiz is a director of a Spanish Institute of Oceanography, IEO. So thank you. And Andreas Tatinescu from head of the Maritime Innovation, Marine Knowledge and Investment Unit of DG Mare, the Direction Générale of Marine Affairs and Fisheries at the European Commission. Thank you. So, Francisco, now, so the floor is yours. Thank you for.
Thank you, Gilles. Thank you very much. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Gilles and Marine Board, for inviting me to this session. Yes, I am here today not as a director of the Institute of Marine Research, but as one of the coordinators of a very interesting, I hope, for you, ongoing rallying action, which is the Marine Science Program. And the other two coordinators are also here in the room. You know very well both Rosa Fernandez and Daniel Rey over there. 2 years ago, the Spanish Ministry of Science and Innovation decided to create the so-called complementary plans, which is a new mechanism for implementing research and development strategy coordinated between the national level, the Spanish state, and the Spanish regions that we call here autonomous communities, as Galicia, the region where you are now. These plans are collaborative actions in which common priorities have been defined between the national research plans and the priorities or interests of the different regions in Spain, looking for synergies, convergence, and perhaps even more important, looking for a better implementation of the funds. These plans has 4 objectives: to improve knowledge generation and technological innovation, foster the coordination of the state level with the regions, to promote collaboration between the regions, and to boost territorial economic transformation. And 8 scientific priority areas were defined within these complementary plans: quantum communication, energy and green hydrogen, agri-food, biodiversity, astrophysics and high energy physics, advanced materials, and biotechnology and health, and marine science. Yes, because ocean is a priority for the research plans at national and regional level here in Spain. In the case, in the case of the National Marine Science Program, involves 7 regions in Spain, those shown in the map, half of them in the Atlantic, half of them in the Mediterranean. And we are deploying here a joint research and innovation strategy to address the current and future challenges for restoring our oceans around Spain. The program, initiated 1 year ago, is very much aligned with the bigger declaration that was presented a few minutes ago, and is very much aligned for 2 reasons. First, because we share a number of specific scientific goals we will see in 1 minute. But I think even more important is because the Marine Science Program is working at 2 levels of governance, national and regional. And as you saw today, that the bigger declarations is giving special importance to work at different levels of governance if we want to have the one voice in the one ocean we want. The program is funded by the EU Next Generation funds with 54 million euros for the next for 3 years, so we have still 2 years ahead. In Galicia, the program is funded with 10 million euros provided by the EU Next Generation funds and by the MFAF, which is 60% provided by the Spanish ministry and 40% provided by the regional government, the Xunta of Galicia, and from here. I must say one important thing about this funding. We are devoting 75% of the funding to hire and train young researchers and technicians. I was hoping a big clap from the young researchers. Yes, and this is true because with this marine science program, we want to build the future, and the future is in your hands, right? We have some experience, but you are the future and you have your own experience as well. So that's why we want to invite to devote such amount of money from the 10 millions for your people. In the marine science program in Galicia, we have three main lines of action. The first one is implemented a sustained and integrated observation and monitoring of the marine ecosystem in Galicia. This is a clear alignment with the bigger declaration we saw minutes ago. And here we have 4 goals or working packages. In total, we have 11 packages in this marine science program with 132 actions. In the first work package, we are developing new observation technologies with a high degree of automation to be implemented during the course of the actions in observation platforms with a low maintenance or low attendance to the platforms, and in the unmanned vehicles like drones. The second, we are developing an integrated marine data platform based in the supercomputing center in Galicia, just 80 kilometers from here in Santiago. A platform that should network and collaborate with another initiatives we saw a lot this morning and following the fair and care principles. Third, we are developing a multi-scale and transdisciplinary simulators combining artificial intelligence and modeling to use different types of data, biological, ecological, physical, social, economic data, and to build services and decision-making tools from there. We're also working on building several digital twins within this action. And finally, within this line of action, we are creating a long-term and long-scale monitoring strategy with a stronger coordination and governance, to be sure that in the future, we will have a sustained and well-coordinated observation. The second line of action within the program is to provide healthy and sustainable seafood from aquaculture. Here we have also 4 working packages. In the first one, we are developing advanced research on genomics for improving aquatic production. In the second one, we are facing one of the major challenges that the aquaculture sector has here in Galicia, which is the seed supply for the mollusk aquaculture. In the third one, we are investigating new approaches for improving animal welfare, because yes, our society in Europe is demanding healthy food, is demanding sustainable food, but also is demanding ethical food. And finally, we are generating new sustainable farming system based on integrated multi-trophic aquaculture. Finally, in the third line of action, we are developing methodologies and mechanisms to promote social and economic transformations with 2 working packages that you will see are fully aligned with the bigger declaration. In the first work package, we're investigating social, economic, and ecological mechanisms to achieve a resilient coastal areas here in Galicia. This should facilitate in the near future the implementations of land-sea policies towards integrated coastal zone management that we want here in Galicia. And finally, the second work package, the 11th in the program, we are working in 3 societal aspects combined: ocean literacy, knowledge transfer, and training education as a mechanism for social transformations to foster a stronger engagement of the citizens in for the restoration and preservation of our oceans. This is what is called ocean citizens in the Vigo declarations. But what about the future? Is this going to finish in 2 years? Well, the truth that is in Galicia, we are using these funds to build a very strong and powerful network with a long-term vision. We are more than 325 researchers from 85 research groups and 14 institutions here in Galicia. Virtually all the institutions related with marine science are involved in the program. I'm talking about the 3 universities of Galicia, 4 national-based research institutions, and 7 regional-based regional institutions. In the last 20 years, The European Union has made an important effort to better structure and integrate the research capacity across Europe. The ongoing European Union missions actually is an example of that and can be a cornerstone to demonstrate how scientific instruments may have a better, higher impact on research and in the society. Moreover, member states in the most recent years are following these principles, these initiatives, which is facilitating the convergence and coherence in research across Europe. We are expecting that our marine science program will become also a cornerstone to demonstrate how European Union funds can have a much more substantial impact on research and the society. And this is so because when we designed the marine science program, we have already in mind the principles of integration, moving towards common objectives and to have a higher impact on research. Finally, our network of researchers and institutions, we are not just a bunch of people meeting now and then. No. We are a group of people working hard in very specific actions to define the future challenges to have a single voice or one voice for the one oceans we want. It's true that we are working regionally, but always having in mind to build a better global ocean region when thinking on global. That's why we want to invite from here another European Union regions taking similar initiatives to cluster with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francisco. So now we leave the floor to Javier Ruiz, so the director of the IEO, the Spanish Institute of Oceanography. Javier, the floor is yours.
Thank you, members of the European Marine Boards, dear colleagues. First, thank you very much for giving the opportunity to give this speech. I must say just that when you set me the topic of the speech about this science and political interface, I thought, well, they gave me one of the most difficult questions in the meeting. I must say, I still feel the same. So I tried my best to explain, based on my experience as director of the Spanish Institute of Oceanography, about the importance to have interfaces between science and policymakers. Let me first try to think a little bit about what is this science and why it's necessary, this science policymakers interface. Science policy interface are mechanisms that facilitate the communication and collaboration between scientists and policymakers. The need for this interface arises because policymakers often require scientific information to make informed decisions. Science policy interface serve as a mechanism to translate scientific knowledge into a language and a format that can be understood and can be used by policymakers. In other words, to say it plainly, science policy, the motivation behind the creation of science policy interface is to bridge the gap between the scientific community and the policymakers. In this two parts dialogue, the first thing I would like to say is something more or less obvious. The Spanish Institute of Oceanography does not belong to the political side, it belongs to the scientific side. It's a body whose mandate by the Spanish state is to provide independent scientific advice for the implementation of public policies by the Spanish state. That is written in the Spanish law, that we must provide scientific statement before any action that public or private actors undertake, and an action that may have the potential to affect the marine ecosystem. This is not a new mandate. The Institute is more than 1 century doing this job. Presently, to conduct this mandate, we have about 1,000 personnel distributed in 9 coastal centers, and we run large infrastructure, many others infrastructure, like the research vessels that is being built here in Vigo, more than 80 meters length, or the largest aquaculture infrastructure in inland in Europe. As you can imagine, from this number and for the role that is assigned to the Institute by the normative framework in Spain, The Institute is the main actor in the provision of scientific advice to the Spanish authorities in matters related to the management of marine ecosystem and its living resources. Providing this advice has an advantage for the Institute, both in terms of the budget of the Institute and also in terms of the political recognition of this scientific body. About 30 to 40% of our budget comes from ministries that are different than the Ministry of Science and Innovation, which is the ministry that we organically belong. And the Institute, the state set the Institute at the core of any decision taken at Spain for things as diverse as modification made by port authorities, coastal action in beaches, marine wind farms, strategies, designing of strategies that are coherent with climate change, marine protected areas, any action on the seafloor, foreign affairs in the sea, sustainable fisheries in and outside of Spain. We all know Spain is a power in fishing, or action in case of an emergency happening. We have one important emergency, a volcanic emergency in La Palma in the year 2021. So despite the Institute is not a political body, providing advice at such a dimension on public policies makes the Institute a well-recognized actor at the political level. Actually, I tell the history, I will probably tell the history too to my grandsons, that my first act as a director was to go to a meeting that was convocated by one of the vice presidents of the government and two ministers. So this is the level, the high level of political interest in the functioning of the Institute in Spain. So having this strong political interest by policymakers in the functioning of science, one, or at least I wonder, what is necessary from science to provide an advice, a knowledge, a scientific knowledge that is effectively taken by the policymakers. And in this, obviously, we have two actors. Again, we have an actor from science, and we have the second side, the policymakers. I will make some reflection of what is necessary, in my view, from the scientific side, and also on the political and the policymaker context that receives this scientific advice. Providing this good independent advice needs some elements. They are essential elements. We need to have expertise and credibility. Those providing this scientific knowledge and advice should have the necessary expertise and qualification in their respective fields. It is essential that they have a record of rigorous and impartial research. There has to be, it's important, absolutely essential to have independence, and this is fundamental for providing unbiased advice. Scientists and experts should not be unduly influenced by political, commercial, or ideological interests that could compromise the objectivity of their recommendations. Relevance. This is also more or less obvious. If you provide advice, it has to be connected with the specific needs of the policymakers. Transparency. The process of providing advice should disclose any potential conflict of interest in this advice. And there are other elements that are also important, like the science has to be peer review, open science has to have a long-term focus, clear communication, and have to incorporate ethical consideration. All these elements are necessary for the advice provided by scientists be accepted by policymakers, by the stakeholders the policymakers have to interact with, and also for the society at large. And as you can see, many of these elements are already incorporated in the Vigo Declaration that has just been signed. And I can tell you, this is not in conflict with the policymakers. It's coherent. It does not go into conflict with the view that policymakers have at national and international level. At the international level, we have bodies like United Nations or the European Union that are the backbone of multilateral political system that give international legitimacy to decisions and the promotion of sustainable development based in science. And we have very clear examples of this at international level, like the Regional Fisheries Organization, the International Panel for Climate Change, or the World Ocean Assessment, among others. In Europe, we have heard that the European Commission, we have heard these days that the European Commission, members of the European Commission describing EU policies like Water Framework Directive, Marine Strategy Framework Directive, or Marine Spatial Planning Directive that are focused in keeping good environmental status based on scientific knowledge. Member states must translate this directive into a legal framework in the countries and must use science to provide this by law. In the case of Spain, I can tell you, and you can see by the dimension of the investment in infrastructure or the proportion of the institute that is funded by ministry different than the Ministry of Science and Innovation is already telling you the interest that country has in using science for promoting sustainable development. In some areas, Spain is even more committed than its international commitment, like it is the case of marine protected areas. As an example, our Vice President, Teresa de Rivera, was considering her institutional assistant to this meeting, but her agenda did not allow finally to assist, but she is always willing to support science for sustainability. Many of you probably know Ramón Margalef. Perhaps not so many of you know Odón de Buen, who is the founder of the Spanish Institute of Oceanography, but these both are clear examples of scientists heavily committed with sustainability. Their names were pronounced in the inaugural speech of our Vice President. I wonder how many countries can say that their Vice President pronounced the names of scientists committed with sustainability in probably one of the most important moments in their assumption of responsibilities, which is the inaugural speech. Of course, if you have this frame, of course, this easiest the work of those scientists that are providing advice or taking decision. Does this mean that we live in a kind of being world where everything is perfect and there is no problem? Of course not, but the present mechanism existing in Europe and Spain prevents the making of irrational decisions which are not based in knowledge for the managing of the marine ecosystem, but stand depending on the public or private actor. You can still hear bitter, sometimes very bitter accusation for the mere fact of presenting a scientific report for an issue that has a social conflict behind. But the overall scenario protects scientific independence and is hostile to this kind of interferences. But this scenario may change. This has happened in other areas of the world. This scenario may change. And maybe in the future it's not so favorable as it is now. And in this moment, I would like to, this EurOCEAN meeting has given particular importance to our younger generation of scientists. And I can see with pleasure there is a lot of young people in the room. So I felt it was important also to transmit to we that are more senior, have more experience in this field, to transmit to our younger colleagues, they need to be strong when you make a scientific, when you have a science you trust in, you have to be strong. You don't need, at some moment in your career, when you provide science for sustainability of the ecosystem, you will face a bitter moment. You should not let your arm to be twisted. The present society is very sensitive to the preservation of the ecosystem and very sensitive to decisions which are based in knowledge. But sometimes in your career, you will be faced with a conflict just by providing scientific independence advice. And this will be at some point an imponderable. And when I have faced this situation in the past, when I was younger, I like it to remember the words that Winston Churchill said to Chamberlain when Chamberlain was coming from a meeting where he thought that he has avoided the Second World War when the conflict was unavoidable. And then Churchill said to him, you were given the choice between war and dishonor. You choose dishonor, and you will have dishonor, and you will have war. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier, with these tough words at the end of your speech between Churchill and Chamberlain. So thank you for the vision between science to policy. And now I will leave the floor to Andrea Stratinescu. So as I said, she is the head of the unit of maritime innovation, marine knowledge and investment in the Directorate General for Maritime Affairs and Fisheries. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. And it's really a pleasure to be here. And I would like to start by, first of all, congratulating the organizers, congratulating all the ones who participated and the ones that stay until the very end. It's really, I would say, revigorating to see a room full at the end of the conference. So EurOCEAN conference are way ahead of policy developments. What you are discussing today, probably you are going to see in the policies in the coming years. And with the declaration, it's for sure that you hit the nail in the head strongly, because what you put in the declaration are really what we need to focus in the next period of time. I will start with the land-sea interactions. This is something that was not too much looked at, but we heard today that already there are movement into this direction. Digital twin of the ocean starts looking on how we integrate land, how we integrate rivers into this. And we need even more. We need probably at the next editions to try to bring the researchers that are working on freshwater, and we need to see how we are looking at these ecosystems, both for marine, but also for freshwater. At the level of the European Union, you heard today about the mission within Horizon Europe. It's the mission Restore Our Ocean and Waters. So we took already the initiative to move into this direction. And you can see in the previous calls that we opened, that we address rivers, we address lakes, not only the coastal and the marine ecosystem. So we look at the whole water system. Then the second priority, it's about ocean observation. I would say that it's a topic dear to my heart. And of course, that a better, a stronger, a coordinated coordination is needed. So we are making steps into this direction, and hopefully we will be able to fulfill what is mentioned into the declaration. So having from the part of the Commission even a legislative proposal that is going to support all of this. But until then, steps already have been done in Europe, and you heard during the presentations that, of course, the community is working stronger and stronger, more and more united, and as well with the digital twin of ocean, we are making steps into this bringing, community together. In terms of better coordination and reducing, I would say, the redundancies and also increasing the efficiencies, for sure there are steps still to be made. With a digital twin, we move towards the FAIR principle: findable, accessible, interoperable, and of course, reusable. There are in other parts of the world working mostly on the first part. I think that the strength in Europe, it's in interoperability and also more and more in the reuse of data. So we can set with the movement and with the collaboration that we are developing with the digital twin and hopefully with the ocean observation, we can set, I would say, the practice. We can set something that can inspire the world beyond what is done at the level of the European Union. So this is the level of ambition that we have for the ocean observation. Because at the end, the ocean observation is the base of marine knowledge. If we do not have properly addressed, then it will have consequences on everything that we are doing linked to marine knowledge. And you know this very well because you are scientific. Then the third one, it's in the Vigo Declaration, it's about commitment of citizens. You heard today about ocean literacy. You heard about the Mission Ocean. And in the Mission Ocean, what we are doing is that all the projects, they have to include involvement of the local communities. They have to include these communities as part of the project, as beneficiaries, the ones that are going to be able to perceive the benefits of the innovation that is demonstrated in their areas. We introduced as well the principle of associated regions. All the projects that are going to be selected for demonstration in various lighthouses, part in Europe, they have to bring in at least 5 associated regions from other parts of Europe, because we want this innovation to be replicated elsewhere, and more, of course, the citizens to perceive it, and like this to be committed towards the change. So as you can see, we are doing a lot with the level of the European Union. Mission Ocean already has 2 years of calls for proposal projects that have been selected. We have now already a community of more than 550 participants in the 2 years of the project. 2023 closed recently. 2024 call is going to come in February next year. So until 2007, a lot, I would say, of other stakeholders to join the community and to be able to work together with one voice for the ocean. I really liked what you mentioned, to speak with one voice, because only like this we can make a change, and only like this as well we can contribute to the objectives of the Ocean Decade, but both at European level, but also through foreseeing the international collaboration. We continue EU to push us at the level of the European Union. So continue pushing us. I will not use probably the word it's lobbying, but okay, say pushing. And I think that with your help, we'll be able to achieve the objectives that we have in front of us. And your declaration, it's really coming very timely. We are ending a commission. We are in front of the new one. It can set a nice road for the future of our ocean in waters in Europe. So with your support, maybe in the next commission, ocean and waters even higher on the political agenda. So let's continue working together. And I think that like this, we'll be able to succeed. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the speakers and the word you say for what's going next, and the optimisms you're showing, and the relationship between the science and the policy. So now I think it's time to close this EurOCEAN 2023. I hope we've been successful in trying to bring some message and to talk together with one voice. And before closing, I will take also again another opportunity to make maybe the scientists think that sometimes the scientists can play a very important role, more than they can imagine. I will take the example of the creation of the IPCC. Everybody now knows what is IPCC and what are their reports, and the policymakers are very aware and looking to the IPCC. I would like to recall how IPCC has been created at the United Nations. It's Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who were fed up with all this warning about the climate change and the non-use of fossil oil and coals, that thought that creating a huge amount of scientists, they will arrive to continue what they want to do with the economy. And they bring a broad guise of scientists
who do perfectly their work. They look at all the communication, at all the paper was being produced, and they came for the recommendations with their scientific view, no care of the politics. The first report was a drama for the politicians, because if they were not considering that they could have such a warning coming for the communities they have created, you know, they created themselves. They believe that the scientists will continue to tell them that continue like you are doing. It's a good way. So that was a good thing. After at the COP21 in 2015, I was involved. It was in Paris, and it was also very funny to see that Laurent Fabius, Minister of Foreign Affairs, was not aware that the ocean was playing a role in the climate change. Can you imagine? So for them, the climate in Paris, it was only in the atmosphere, and 71% of the Earth of the surface had nothing to do with the climate. So he discovered that, and I was surprised. So we were a group of scientists, and we explained him the role of the ocean and how it works, and it made them consider, and they opened a special session for ocean during the COP21. It was the beginning of having a vision of the ocean, how the ocean was playing a role in the climate. Now we see it's not playing a role only on the climate. Of course, we have seen that the ocean is everywhere for our life, for our future, and for this. So I think we have been, with this declaration, trying to bring you to this science, to policy, and to this vision. I hope you continue to do your science the best you can, produce your articles that the people from the different panels can read, make synthesis, be able to do synthesis for the policymaker, because they need this. Now they understand that the science is very important, as playing a role, and we have to continue in that directions. And all the organizations here have been playing a role during these 2 days. Speak, I think, already with one voice in one direction. And I was very happy to have the possibility to talk to you and to share this. And I would like to thank you, all of you, for being present today and yesterday. And I would like now, will ask you to make a lot of applause for all the panelists that I would like to thank, the moderators and the speakers who were very useful, bringing their knowledge and bringing the information. And I hope that the people who were looking at us, watching at us on YouTube, take the message home and try to go in the same direction. So I would like to applaud the moderator, the panelists, and the speakers for all the good jobs they did, and also our speakers today. And now it's not finished, because now you are awake. So I would like now you to upload the technical, the catering staff, the hostess, who were able to give us this nice set, and the coffee, and looking after us. So, and the technical guys who were able to give my name in big there. So I would like to applaud. Thank you very much. And now to the co-organizers. We are here with all these, the co-organizers. I will start by the European Mind Board. Sorry, guys. So it's but I will especially thank all the secretariat, the team, Sheila, but especially with my French, Spanish accent, Angel Muniz Pinela. He has been working for 2 years to bring this together. Angel. Angel, the guy running with the mic everywhere and bringing all the stuff. Thank you, Angel. I would like to thank the Institute of Marine Research of the Spanish National Research Council. Thank you very much. The Spanish Institute of Oceanography
you. Setmar, and this member of the organization. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. The European Commission. Thank you. We will push you. We will push you. A joint programming initiative, JPI Ocean. For Euromarine. Behind EuroGoose. EurOCEAN. The Center for Marine Research of the University of Vigo and the Campus do Mar. And even the industry partner. Thank you for the fish. Concemar, I'm not very good at that with the X. Concemar and Anfaco. And now you are free. Thank you very much to be there. Thank you. It's okay. And I applaud you for all your contribution. Thank you to you.
We are feeling lost, we are falling down. Hope we finally meet again at sundown. We are moving on, we're beautiful and strong, yeah. Hope we finally meet again at sundown. Hope we finally meet again at sundown. Sundown. Hope to finally meet again at sundown.